Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Friday, May 6th, 2022, and we start with a historic announcement from the White House that Karine Jean-Pierre, who has enjoyed a long career in Democratic communications, has been picked by President Joe Biden as the first Black woman and first openly gay White House press secretary. President Biden said in a statement that Karine not only brings the experience, talent, and integrity needed for this difficult job, but she will continue to lead the way in communicating about the work of the Biden-Harris administration on behalf of the American people. So congratulations to Karine Jean-Pierre, historic appointment by President Biden yesterday. She takes over on May 13th when current White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki moves on. Today, we speak with Anthony Robinson, political director of the National Democratic Training Committee, which the organization says is the largest, most in-depth Democratic campaign training program in the country. It provides the training tools individuals can use immediately and the resources needed to win campaigns and change communities. So let's say good morning to Anthony, as well as let's say good morning to Oseye Boyd of the Indianapolis Recorder and James Wright of the Washington Informer. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And Anthony, welcome to Let It Be Known. So let's start. Tell us about the organization. Many may not know who you guys are, and what you do.
Yeah, well, sure. Great to be on with you. Thank you for having me on, Stacey. So, National Democratic Training Committee, or NDTC, that's a lot to say at any given time. So, I'll refer to it as NDTC, and let it be known that it is not an arm of the DNC. But like many organizations, much sentiment after the election of Donald Trump, organizations were formulated to find an answer to get more Democrats elected, and NDTC was formed, and it started out with just a couple of simple trainings on fundraising, really, and how candidates could effectively fundraise in their communities, and it has grown on to have over 150,000 learners take the trainings, whether online, in person, or through our staff academy. So we're really trying to equip any Democrat, really, at scale, to be able to run for office, work on a campaign staff, or serve in the Democratic Party as a local leader.
Yeah, and let's take it from the top too. How do candidates connect with voters? What's the secret, especially given the political climate today?
Sure. Well, I would like to say that that is simple, but sometimes they make it hard. It's about talking to people and not at people. It's about connecting at not so much a cerebral level, but at an emotional level. Finding that connection, shared values. Even a lot of times, people, some candidates are look too far ahead and already are trying to legislate or govern, but you have to run a race and you have to win. And I often think about it, maybe from a Marine Corps background, like you run to win. If you want to win, you have to train. And if you want to train, then we say that you should come to the National Democratic Training Committee.
Yeah, and we also, and we'll get to your buddy James Wright, and of course Oseye Boyd. What can it's on everybody's mind. What can Democrats do to maintain control in the 2022 midterms?
Well, again, not to make it simple, and there are challenges ahead. I think it's more so not pointing the finger at what is wrong with the other side, but connecting with what's right. And I don't think I would be out of line by saying that historically, Democrats have had challenges with messaging. They have acquiesced some messaging. I mean, when you look at the Republicans, they can get behind any topic. If you say that Republicans, we're all going to talk about kicking puppies, most Republicans will get in line and they'll start talking about kicking puppies. But with Democrats, there have been challenges with messaging coherently and collectively. And rather than tearing other Democrats down, it ought to be focused on what Democrats are doing right, what they stand on, what they do not stand on, and form a very distinct contrast between the other side.
Yeah, I'm going to let Oseye jump in here. Oseye Boyd of the Indianapolis Recorder. Oseye?
Yeah, I was just, as I was listening to you speak, I was just thinking about the long game,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about training and thinking ahead. I often wonder, do people just decide, oh, I'm going to run for office, and not really think about all it takes to run for office and what you need to do, and you need to make those connections. How long does it start? Should you, if like if I'm thinking about today, should I think about I'm going to run in say 2024, or versus, oh, I'm going to put my hat in on this election cycle and then see what happens?
Well, that's a very good question, and we actually have a training which is kind of our bread and butter. So it's called "So You Think You Want to Run," and it starts to put in your mind the things that you have to, the hard conversations that you have to have with your family. Like, no one should jump into this lightly. We talk about building. I may date myself here, but having a Rolodex. And it's not a physical Rolodex, but actually finding names of supporters and things like that can start with people in your church, people in your fraternity. If you have a veteran network, co-workers, it could start anywhere. And even forming a kitchen cabinet. Who's going to be your brain trust? So no, you should not think about it lightly or just jump into it. I would hope that no one would do that. But I'm glad that you brought up the long game. And that's really where I think that conservatives or Republicans have really beat Democrats, to the punch. They think about the long game. I have said in many circles that some Republicans probably thought like, well, hey, go ahead, take Biden. We'll have your presidency, but we have the governor and the state houses. And when you look at what's happening with even the conversation on abortion rights, I mean, irrespective of what the White House does or even Congress, which it would be good to codify Roe versus Wade, but still, states still have a lot of power. And so the long game is building from the bottom up and not really from the top down. We need mayors, you need city councilmen, you need aldermen. I mean, they're even judges. If you think back to the Kenosha trial, that judge that passed down, he had run unopposed 3 cycles. So we need people to run. In many offices that outside of the federal offices, there are over some 400,000 elected offices. That's a lot of offices, and many of them are uncontested. And so we need people to run, but it shouldn't be gone about in a foolhardy way or lighthearted.
Yeah, James.
Yeah, I have a question about candidate quality. One of the things I'll give an example, Anthony, in the governor's race in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Terry McAuliffe, who is a former governor, ran a horrible campaign, but he was basing that he would win on the fact that because he's Terry McAuliffe and because I'm just such a great guy, people are going to reelect me no matter what I say about the schools and parents input into the schools. How do you coach somebody who thinks they're just a great person and people are going to vote for them because they're just so wonderful?
So candidate recruitment is a very powerful tool. Now, NDTC is not in that realm because honestly, there may be someone in a class, a training that may be running against each other. And so, we don't endorse any candidates either. We will come out after people have run primaries. Their support that NDTC will show in that case. But that's where the full cycle, we said that we work with candidates, staffers, and local leaders. I think it's up to Democratic local leaders, people that are with the state and local parties to really strongly vet and have a strong recruitment program. And we can come in and we can run a cohort with that party and give them all the tools. And at the end of the day, I think it's really up for them to put the best person forward. But I think you're exactly right that sometimes we can drink our own Kool-Aid and think that we're so, there's only a difference. Am I great or am I excellent? And that's not gonna win elections. People have issues that are very important to them, that are dear to them, that they want you to connect with them on. And so the candidate recruitment and putting forth the best candidate has to be prioritized.
Yeah, and Anthony, Democrats have long relied on the black vote. Obviously, the black vote got the Senate, got the president, and the black woman vote in particular. But now that many voter suppression laws have passed, maps have been gerrymandered, and throw in so much mistrust. Is there a plan when you talk to young folks, when you talk to all folks, when you talk about Democrats, talking to them about the Democratic Party? Well, do you get pushback? I guess that's one part of the question from African Americans, and also what should be the plan, not only to maintain the strong Black voter base, but to increase it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And yes, there is. I think that sometimes, and I don't want to say this in a curt manner, but I think sometimes there's apathy
Mhm.
with Black voters. Hey, I voted for the Democrats this time and nothing happened in one election cycle. And I think we can't fall victim. And I say we because I am a Black man. We can't fall victim to that apathy. I mean, it takes time to undo. And I mean, just think about the history of this country and the policies that have been in place, and we're still trying to right those wrongs. So I
Mhm.
think that it's not the right approach to think that just because we elected a Democratic president in Joe Biden that everything is going to that it's a silver bullet. I think that can't. But in the same breath, though, I think that people have to, or our policymakers, our Democratic policymakers, have to walk the talk, and they
Mhm.
have to bring about the change that's important for the Black community. And I think that in some of the areas, whether it's infrastructure or whether it's, I mean, even the conversation about uh, student loan debt. I think that affects the Black community in a significant way. I know it impacts me in a significant way, but you have to be vocal about these things, and you have to not worry about what others will think about making these what may seem as drastic or astronomical changes. I think that it's time that Democratic lawmakers just kind of walk the talk. But I would agree with you that there is pushback, and rightfully so. But I think that we can't fall victim to the apathy.
Yeah, has the party? Do you, and from your view, from what you're hearing, and from what you understand, have they just simply taken African Americans for granted?
I think in some cases, maybe yes. If I'm being completely honest with you, I think so. But I think that it's in the areas where that might be the thought. I think that's amplified probably more so than what it actually might be. But there are real issues affecting real people that have to be addressed.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashia?
Well, I've been thinking about voter apathy
Hmm.
and how much that plays a role in engagement.
Hmm.
And also, I think it's a two-way street. I think you have voters who are apathetic, but we're apathetic because we feel we're taken for granted, or you don't see people once they get your vote, you don't see them, and you don't really see a lot of candidates who have a backbone and stand up for. You mentioned issues, voters' rights. You mentioned issues that are very important to the Black community,
Hmm.
um, and we don't really hear those issues once you're elected, which then fuels the apathy. It's like this cycle that just continues. How do we engage people um, to actually be a part of the process? And then, like you said, they're like, well, nothing happened. Nothing happened this cycle. Instead of us I think there's a lack of education for the Black community as how the political process actually works. We often think, well, I voted and nothing happened. Or like I was saying earlier, and kind of what James alluded to, you get these candidates in, people just like, well, I'll just run. And then they say, well, I'm going to vote for them because they're Black. And they can't do anything worse than what the white man in office is already doing.
Hmm.
But we don't understand how this actually works. So how do we change that so we're not so apathetic? And apathy is an American issue too. It's not
Yeah.
just us.
Very true. I will say, I just a little background. Both my parents were involved in the civil rights movement. My dad, you may hear about the February 4 at North Carolina A&T, but my dad was in another cycle that went to the Woolworth counter, and was arrested and was sent to a temporary jail at the Armory in Greensboro, North Carolina. And so I use that to say that organizing, that's where organizing comes in. You need people in the communities talking about the issues and relaying that back to the candidates. There has to be, it has to be cyclical. There has to be a back and forth, but you can't just have people knocking doors just during one cycle. You need organizers in the community all the time talking about the issues, and not just rolling, I don't want to use the word loosely, but tokens out for candidates that maybe at a federal level, just when it's convenient. You need. I often talk about as a person, as a churchgoer, I am sick and tired of candidates rolling up the last week before election, coming to my church. And don't ask me to come to my church 1 week because no one knows you. And so it's about that long game that we talked about earlier. It has to be a long game with the organizer. We can't be on cycle and off cycle. We have to talk about and organize around the issues that are important long term. And again, this is where I think just talking about the abortion issue, Republicans have been working on this for decades, and they kept their foot on the gas. They didn't care what you said about them. They didn't care how you demonized them. They stayed with their game plan. And I hope that's not the case, but they're kind of seeing the return on their investment. And I think that Democrats have to look at the long-term investment. And this is from a fiscal lens, from a human capital lens, and from issue or policy lens. So I think that could go a long way, but I am all for organizing long-term, organize early, organize often.
Yeah. And Anthony, again, just staying on this theme of apathy and the things that have gone on, when you talk to folks at the training committee, where does one find inspiration that will help them? A candidate where does a candidate find inspiration that'll help them win?
That's a very good question. And I will say that I think you put up the graphic. We just had a Building Black Political Power Real Talk, and that's the name of the panel with Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. They get inspiration from each other. We have a Facebook community where people are able to talk to each other. I was just recently in Tulsa, Oklahoma for a training and saw at one table 2 women that did not know each other, and they just so happened to be African-American women. And one woman shared her story about what she did as far as phone banking, which in call time is really most candidates do not like it, but it's the bread and butter, and it's necessary. And based on her story that she shared in that training, they exchanged numbers, and I believe they live probably about 30 minutes apart in Oklahoma, but now they have connected. And so it's that connectivity between the community. So I often talk about who preaches to the preacher, who counsels the counselor, who teaches the teacher. And we all need someone to hold us accountable and to be accountability partners. So it's really other candidates having our other partners, because we're not in a silo, and I'm not afraid to lift up that we work with Collective PAC, we work with Higher Heights, we work with other organizations, because while we at scale, we provide probably more trainings than anyone else, we can't do it all. And so we have to work with the emerges of the world, Run for Something, which really works heavily with millennial candidates. And we just had a training or a panel that was focused at Gen Zers. And so I think that really comes into play. I think that's something that we do really well, being collaborative, but having the people that people look up to, creating a forum for them to speak about their experience.
Yeah, James, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit, James. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have 2 quick questions. As I look at Ms. Boyd over there, her congressperson is Andre Carson. He is in a red state. And what would you recommend for someone, not necessarily Andre, but in Indiana, to run as a Democrat and be successful, number one? And number 2, fundraising. Why is it that minorities and women have problems fundraising?
All right, so I'll take your first question, and I will say historically, since I've been at the National Democratic Training Committee, Indiana has been one of our largest turnouts when we've had in-person training. So they understand the work that's needed to do there. I think there's some things that are kind of baseline and foundational as running as a candidate, but I think there's some different mindset when it comes to running in a red district or even running in a rural district. And it's about the connection. It's about talking about finding those shared values. Now, there may be some policy issues that we disagree on, but I think at an emotional level, at a community level, I think there are some things that that you can connect with shared values. Like, we all want our children to be safe at school. Now, regardless of where you are on gun rights, I think we can all agree that we want our children to feel safe at school. We want our communities to be safe. We want our air to be clean. And those are things that candidates in red areas can talk about. And again, the issues that matter in the community, I think, connect better than sometimes even national topics. Now, to your end about fundraising, I'm glad that you asked that question, James. That's something that where it comes in, where it's very helpful for us to work with groups such as Higher Heights or Collective PAC or Emerge that focuses directly with women. You know, I will say as a minority, you know, I sometimes have trouble asking people for money. So I think that there is a systemic piece. There's a historical piece that comes into play with minority candidates or even with women. It's kind of that fear of asking for money because you didn't ask your parents for money if there wasn't a very good cause or if they didn't offer it to you. So I think there's some historical pieces that come into play that you cannot ignore. And so that's why you can't have just this boilerplate or foundational, like, hey, everyone can fundraise like this or everyone can phone bank like that. You have to be able to talk to people and understand their lived experience. And so that's why even with our trainers that we have been intentional about diversifying our cadre of trainers and why it's important to have diversity in campaign staff as well. And so I think that's very important because even if you have a white candidate and you have a non-white campaign manager or fundraiser or digital or comms person, you have that different of thought. But when you have that group think, it can really get you in trouble and you're not really connecting with your constituency. So I hope I answered your question there, but those are kind of two things that are top of mind for me.
Well, and go along with that, Anthony, the candidate himself or herself, what characteristics does a good candidate have?
Well, you have to listen. You have to listen. And sometimes that's one of the strategies that we teach, even when it comes to phone banking or doing your call time. You make your pitch and then you shut up. You know, you have to listen. And I think so many people are, a lot of times candidates, and regardless of party or ideology, they're thinking about what's in it for them. You really have to, and this may sound corny, but you really have to do it for the people, you know. And I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of people that at the end of the day, seriously, they are concerned about helping other people. And one of the things that I think that got me into politics is having it in my home, seeing my parents involved in politics and in civil rights and in movements, was being a servant of the people. And I hope that I can plant the seed of a tree that can provide shade, even if not for me, but for others.
Yeah, you talk about plant the seeds. Again, African Americans, Black power, how do they get this power back? Because it seems, you know, they went to the polls, Black folks went to the polls, Black women in general went to the polls in record numbers in the 2020 election with the hope that they can take some of that power back. And it seems that many are disappointed. The power is so important. We seem to rely on, you know, whether it be Joe Biden or whether it be someone else. How do we get this power back politically?
Well, I think it's the long game, and I think about, you know, all of us, I think, would agree that we stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us, and I think about the people that took egregious that had to pay poll taxes or had to take count how many bubbles were in a bar of ivory soap in order for the right to vote. I think about them, and that's what really motivates me. But I think it's taking back that Black power. I think about something that Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester said, is that we really have to be in it until the fight is won.
Mhm.
And James may understand this statement. There's a quote that talks about, we have to be prepared to fight until hell freezes over, and then be
Yep.
prepared to fight on the ice.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
we can't be in it for the short game. And even if it's not everyone, we have to have some dedicated folks that are going to be in it for the long game. But taking back that Black power, I also think about oftentimes those Black women that helped Doug Jones in Alabama, and how they were kind of, they it's no question they helped turn that election, and maybe we're forgotten about the next cycle. And I hope and pray that they are still in it, because they understand their power. And so first we have to recognize the power that we have, and then operationalize it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Anthony, last election, we saw the candidates, and I'm talking not the presidential election, I'm talking 2021 November elections. We saw candidates who advertised with the Black press, with members of the Black press. They all won. We also saw in the South, in particular, our newspapers in the South, Republican engagement with our newspapers in the South. So with that in mind, does your organization understand the value of engaging the Black press to help candidates win? And not just, and I mentioned advertising, but just having, we will call individuals, whether it's a congressperson or a senator, or a state senator, and those who come on seem to do well. And I'm not trying to take credit for it, but I'm talking about as the Black press as a whole. But we see some who will give us excuses why they can't come on with us, but then a half hour later they on MSNBC, and then in November they lose. So do you guys talk at all about the value of engaging the Black press?
Well, I would say, and I'm very happy that NDTC has improved with diversifying our staff, and are able to bring up topics like this that are important in our lives. Again, speaking as a Black man, that maybe others are not aware of. And I think that this is where the collaboration comes in, by connecting with, again, a collective PAC that knows intimately about that and can even do media training potentially for candidates. I think that's very important. We don't do that, but I think we do a very good job of connecting people. And I think even my personal life, that I'm able to connect people with spaces that because I don't know it all, and I can't be a one-stop for everyone, but I can connect people with that. But I think that is something that we talk about, especially with the emphasis. And again, and I'm probably not telling you anything new, but the state and local power is going to be greatly important in the midterms and beyond. I think I mentioned it at the top of the broadcast, that probably more so than top down, the state and local pieces, but state papers, local papers, publications. And we talked about the legacy publications, people being able to connect with them. But I will say to this end that I think we have to kind of meet in the middle, because a lot of local candidates, and I don't know whether you know this or not, are often 1 or 2 person teams.
Yeah.
A lot of people think about campaign staffs as, hey, I have a campaign manager, I have a digital director, and then there are 10 other people that are working phones in this elaborate office. And oftentimes it's someone's basement with a laptop and a printer that's probably on its last leg. So, I think that there are spaces where both sides can kind of meet in the middle. But I think there's work always to be done. I'm not going to sit here and say that we have done it perfectly, but I think that's a very good point to bring up.
Well, I just want to add quickly. I think that's where it comes to being efficient and smart and savvy, utilizing the Black press, understanding the reach we have, understanding our audience. It doesn't always have to be the Black candidates either. A good politician is going to use the media to their benefit. You need to be savvy. You need to understand how to reach out. Our IBLC, our Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, they use our Facebook page. They have regular Friday sessions where they tell the constituents what they're doing. That is something that they started doing a couple years ago. When I first came into became editor, Congressman Carson's office reached out to me. We connected. They came and met with me. Senator Todd Young's office came. We connected. It's those kind of things that they have an understanding of. Senator Todd Young is not, he's Republican and he's white, but he understands we are his constituents. He still has a lot of the Black community that's underneath him. And he serves them and he understands that. And and we have a voice in whether he's still in the office or not. So I think we have to understand that as well, but we need our elected officials and future elected officials to understand the Black press is needed. We still exist, and we still have ways to get your message out there.
So Oseye, when we have our real talk session on connecting with the Black press, Stacey, Oseye, and James, I want you all to know I'm calling on you.
Okay.
You Anthony Robinson, the political director extraordinaire, I should add, of the National Democratic Training Committee. We know we're out of time. We're so glad to have you this morning. We thank you for your time. We certainly thank Oseye Boyd of the Indianapolis Recorder. So remember her, Anthony. We got to reach out to her. And James Wright of the Washington Informer. And don't forget, this is the 195th anniversary of the Black Press of America. Who else has been around 195 years and not only been around, but thrived? And we have our annual convention in June in New Orleans. Register at nmpa/events.com for a great hotel rate in New Orleans. We look forward to seeing you on June 22nd, headlined by the great Stephanie Mills. Everybody have a great weekend. Join the convention, sign up, register, and we'd love to see you out in New Orleans. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.